College professors. What's your "I'm surprised you made it out of high school" story? I taught English as a second language at a community college for about 10 years. Most of my students were adults trying to improve their language skills to either enter the workforce or continue on to regular college courses. My colleagues and I had a reputation for being tough on academics. We weren't cruel, but we didn't lower standards. Mistakes were pointed out, incomplete work was called out, and students had to back up their ideas in writing and orally. The goal was to prepare them for the real academic world, which wasn't going to coddle anyone. Sometimes that toughness felt thankless. There were days when students struggled with grammar so basic that it felt like we had to start from square one. Other days, presentations would go horribly wrong because a student couldn't find the words to express themselves, or they froze mid-sentence. Yet the ones who stuck with it eventually showed real progress, and that was rewarding. The thing that always stuck with me, though, were the interactions I had once they moved on from ESL classes to regular college-level courses. I would run into former students around campus, in the library, in hallways, at the cafeteria. Often, I asked them how things were going, curious if our classes had prepared them for the next step, and almost every time, I got the same kind of reaction: wide-eyed disbelief. "Can you believe how bad some of these students are?" one would ask. I remember Maria, who came to the US at 14 and had spent a few years in our ESL program before transitioning to regular classes. She was fluent, confident, and articulate. One afternoon in the library, she leaned over and whispered, "I can't believe half of my classmates can graduate high school. They literally don't know how to write a full sentence or solve simple math problems." I remember laughing, but also feeling a little stunned. She wasn't exaggerating. In follow-up meetings, I found other students sharing similar sentiments. One guy, Ahmed, who had been in the US for 6 years and worked 2 jobs while attending ESL classes, told me how he struggled to understand why a group project would completely derail when his peers couldn't organize a single paragraph in order. It wasn't just writing. Presentations were a nightmare for many native-born students. I had former students tell me how shocked they were that classmates would get up in front of a group and read directly from their phones or notes, unable to speak a coherent thought without pausing every other word. They compared it to how they had been trained. In ESL, they had been drilled to form complete sentences, practice pronunciation, and engage in discussions respectfully. Yet some of their native-speaking classmates were still fumbling with concepts that had been reinforced year after year in high school. One day, I ran into Lee, a young woman who had joined our ESL program after moving here from China. She had graduated high school in her home country, excelled in English classes with us, and was now in a literature course with mostly American students. She shook her head, incredulous, and said, "I can't believe these kids made it through high school without knowing how to write a paragraph. It's actually scary." These encounters weren't rare. They happened over and over again. Students who had struggled with the language barrier in ESL were now outperforming their native peers in classes that should have been easier for Americans. They could construct essays, give presentations, and reason through problems logically. And yet, some students who had grown up here seemed utterly unprepared for what was expected at a college level. It was a strange mix of pride and disbelief for me. Pride because the students who had worked so hard to learn a new language were excelling once they moved on. Disbelief because it exposed how uneven basic education had been for some native students. Over time, I started to notice a pattern. Students who had faced real challenges, learning a language, navigating a new culture, developed skills and discipline that many of their classmates, who had never struggled academically in the same way, never cultivated. That pattern became one of the most vivid lessons of my teaching career. I think about it every time I meet a former student who surprises me with their accomplishments, knowing the hurdles they had to overcome. They remind me that education isn't just about age or background. It's about persistence, focus, and the willingness to push through discomfort. And honestly, some of the native-born students who coasted through high school, they make me shake my head every time.